know about now.
As soon as you turn that button on, all of ours turn green too.
Oh, did it really? Oh, I didn't know that. Okay, today is whatever it is, and it's the appointed time and place for the Nampa City Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. And our first item of business tonight is the director, Ashby, that's the name, right? Yeah, if you would commence with your program, sir, we would appreciate it.
All right, Chairman and Commissioners, appreciate you being here tonight, and those online as well. So the first thing I'd like to cover, Christy, if you could share that, is a quarterly density report that we gave to City Council. In the future, I'd like to do this before this commission, before we take it to City Council, so that you can give input. This is our first time doing it, and just learning the ropes, I guess. So that's on the screen there. Maybe.
Ellos también como que están probando.
I got it.
Thank you.
Shut it off.
Okay.
You're not plugged in. There.
Maybe. There we go. Okay. So I just wanted to cover these 5 bullet points. I'll talk about growth, what our growth rate has been doing, what the numbers are right now, what they're projected to be, and then what 2020 subdivision applications were approved or are in review, where subdivision growth is occurring, and how our subdivisions are changing. Pardon me, let me grab my notes. Okay, so to start, Nampa has grown at a 9-year average growth rate of 3.07%. And according to Compass, our metropolitan planning organization, our estimated population in 2020 is 106,860. And this growth is significant and impacts the city's ability to provide services and maintain our infrastructure. So you can see the growth rate. I thought it was really interesting, this growth rate going up and down. That's the orange line there. It just seems to kind of peaks and valleys here, one after another. But overall, you can see this trend increasing over time. And in 2020, we had a significant growth rate. I think it was about 6% growth rate. And as well as in 2017, another significant one. I think that was also just a little over 6%. So those are the numbers. So let's get on to our preliminary plats. We had 11 preliminary plats approved with a total of 1,462 dwelling units. We had 3 short plats with a total of 32 dwelling units, and we had 29 final plats with a total of 1,444 dwelling units. And I put a note up there. Most of the dwelling units cited above are single-family homes. A multifamily development often does not require the subdivision process, so you won't see those multifamily developments reflected in here unless they've gone through a subdivision process.
Can we ask questions as we see this?
Of course.
You know, the top one is said, number 11, we had 11 preliminary plats with 1,400 units. The bottom one is 29 plats, but almost the same number of units.
Mm-hmm.
So is that a trend that we're having larger plots coming through or something?
So remember, preliminary plats can be the larger plat, right? Because they're looking at the total development. And then final plats can come in phases. So it could be that you have a preliminary plat that's this big, and then you have a final plat that's only one phase of that preliminary plat. So it's pretty significant that those final plats, really that the number that you might want to look at closely is that final plat, because those are the ones that are going to be being developed right now. But then if you look back on the 11 preliminary plats, 1,400 dwelling units approved for sometime in the future, that's going to be that's going to come about in a final plat in the next year, 2, 3, 7. It could be a long time before we see those, but that's kind of a gauge to see where things are going. What's interesting about this is, though, that 11 preliminary plats, those are just for single-family residential, primarily, I should say, are for single-family residential. So we've seen a lot of multifamily growth. Well, not a lot of those have to have a subdivision done. So you're going to continue to see that because we've continued to approve planning entitlements for multifamily development, and you'll continue to see those numbers increase. And I've got some statistics there that I'll show you on multifamily. But again, long-term thinking, you're looking at the preliminary plats. Short-term thinking, you're looking at the short plats and the final plats. So let me go to a map quickly. This is showing the final plats for all of 2020. And up in the northeast section of our city, you can see quite a bit of development. You've all seen these come before you in 2020. Those final plats are being built right now, or being prepared to be built. Also, the other end of the spectrum down there is the southwest corner. That's where we're seeing a lot of growth too. So it seems like northeast and southwest are our primary growth areas, with a few in other locations. Okay, so this is going actually back to preliminary and short plats. So this is that long-term thinking. Here's what was developed in 2020, or here's what was approved in 2020, and you'll be seeing over the next few years for final plats. Those are them there, and then here's the southern half of that map. Now, a little more spread out than those final plats we're showing around the perimeter of our community, and a few internal infills. And there's the list of projects in 2020 that were approved for preliminary plats and short plats.
Hey, Rodney?
Yeah.
Do you know the trend, northeast, southwest, do you see that continuing in the next 5, 10 years in those areas, the growth continue, and not in southeast and northwest?
That's a really good question. The only thing I can guess at, oh man, this is jumping all over. There we go. So the final plats are there. So you'll see development, you'll see building in these locations over the next 3 to 5 years, definitely. But these preliminary plats are where you're going to start seeing those, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years from now, those could be coming in. And again, they're pretty much spread out a little more. So I would say that in the next 5 years, yeah, we're going to see that continue to grow in those areas, northeast and southwest. And beyond that, maybe we'll see some changes, a little more distributed.
Have you seen a trend in where they're building multifamily?
Yeah, so you can see on here that the top number is multifamily, but these, again, are only subdivisions. We don't have that that data for the things that don't require subdivisions.
Like a infill development or something?
Right. So none of those up there show multifamily except for the Wolfpack subdivision, which had 28 dwelling units. So go down to the next one. Mallard Apartments, 36. Roosevelt Village, 22. But other than that, those are primarily single family, but they're subdivisions. Okay. So these are the final plats again, just a closer look at them. You can see, let's see if we can pick out any that are multifamily. The Lost River Townhomes, 20 dwelling units. Is that it? That's it on that one. And that's none on there except for Hardwood Estates. And that one actually was, that was an application which didn't get approved for.
And withdrawn.
Yeah, was withdrawn, right? So the duplexes on those lots didn't get approved, so that number 8 would go away. Okay, and that's all the different subdivisions were approved.
I got a question for you, Rodney.
Yeah.
So you see that where those growth centers are at, northeast, southwest, but it seems like there is a disproportionate amount of residential to commercial development. Like, you have these people that are spreading out,
Yes.
but all the commercial stays centralized and everybody's coming in.
Yeah.
Are there strategies that we need to be considering to
Yes, great
try and
question.
add the commercial and get it to where the people are, as opposed to having them all pack into one spot?
Yeah, that is a really good question. And we are looking at that. Our comprehensive plan addressed that issue and tried to come up, it used to be that we'd have these like commercial nodes we could move around. We don't have that anymore, but we do have an allowance for some neighborhood commercial in like a subdivision. And there's some specific requirements that they have to meet in order to provide that. It's pretty small, but I completely agree with you. I think we need to do more. We're going to be starting we have more information on this the next time we meet, I think. Doug, when did we say we're going to present that, a density discussion?
Oh, that's coming up for the whole commission, it's coming up in March.
Okay, coming up in March. So we've used a little like a steering committee, and I think Ron is on that committee, to be on a discussion about density and how we address density. There's also some discussion about open space and likely mixed use. How do we address this need for mixed use? Excuse me. And commercial in those residential areas, because you're right, we call them like a commercial or even a food desert. There's multiple places in our community that are just residential, and so we're trying to address that. But that's
So,
a great comment.
What do you, I wonder, because I think, developers, what keeps them and pushes them away to residential versus developing commercial stuff? Is it just easier to do residential and so everybody's doing it because it's the hot market? Because I think that they probably drive a lot of that, right? Developers, are looking for what's going to fit in this area. But I wonder if there's things that we can do or to make it more desirable for them to pursue commercial development as opposed to just go into residential.
Yeah, great points and great question. The thing that drives commercial development the most are housetops, rooftops, and meaning number of dwelling units in a close proximity to where they want to be. So if we approve more multifamily, higher density residential, that's going to create that environment or that market that's necessary to get commercial to follow. And it is kind of a rolling thing where we do a lot of commercial and then we get a lot of residential. And then because we've got a lot of residential, we need more commercial. And so it kind of cycles through a little bit. So I think we're in that residential stage of that right now.
Is there concern about the agricultural land that's being swallowed up?
Yeah, I think there is concerns. I was a part of a committee for the county that included the county and multiple communities and counties throughout the state to try to address this. There's little that a city can do though, because if we want to preserve agricultural land, we have to do something and like entitle it to agriculture and keep it from developing. Well, that's really the role of a county to do, and they're trying to address that. But the real role of a city is to provide greater densities that a county will not allow. And my argument for that is, if a city creates greater density, we are preserving ag land. Because if people are coming to this valley, either they go and spread out in the farmland and take over farmland, or they come into the city with greater densities and take up less space and use existing services. So I think our role as a city is likely to do that, create greater densities. And greater densities means all the way from single family to multifamily.
Yet city councils will not go after enclave properties because they don't want to disturb the status quo.
What do you mean by that?
There's lots of land in the city that's vacant,
Oh,
and they don't want to go after those to incorporate them into the city.
right. Right,
So on one hand, we're saying, let's do this, but on the other hand, we say, no, we're not going to do that.
right.
So that's
Yeah.
what they need to really resolve, is do they have the willpower to do it the right way or not?
Yeah.
Since they're elected officials, they don't.
Well, that's something that you can talk with them about on the 9th of November when we meet.
Yeah.
I think that's a great,
I brought it
great
up
point.
before, but nothing
Yeah.
changed.
Well, I think it's, you'd want to learn the lessons from Detroit, right? Where Detroit grew in rings, and then you ended up having these dead rings inside the city limits, where the city just continued to spread and spread and spread, and the city died from within because
Yeah.
nobody wanted to be there. They wanted to be outside the town. So whatever we can do to try and make people want to live inside the city limits,
Yeah.
They don't have the density that they had in the first place,
Sure.
so that makes it easier for us.
but that's the trend you see on the map, is like, they're pushing out because they want to get out of town. But what can we do to help them want to be back here?
Yeah. So infill development is a key component of that. Yeah. And how can we incentivize that? How can we make that workable for developers? That's the question. Yeah. Okay. So how are subdivisions changing? I think we kind of talked about this already. They're getting denser. Here's a graph showing that the number of units approved has increased dramatically since 2013. And I would say probably a pretty steady growth if you account for the ups and the downs. And then the total acreage used, kind of that same trend, but I think that this graph is a little bit interesting to show that while it increased in 2019, it didn't increase as dramatically. It didn't have such a dramatic peak on total acreage, likely meaning that there's greater density, right? We're approving greater density in 2019. And then the average gross density for final plats by year, this one on 2015 was, I've got some notes here. I want to get it right. It was because of 4 subdivisions that were approved in 2015, and they were in the RMH zone. They were multifamily developments. The spike in 2014-15 is a result of 4 subdivisions located in the RMH and RML zones, which allow greater densities than most other residential zones. The spike in the average is not, however, representative of more dwelling units, but rather that the final plats approved that year had greater densities than other years. If only a few developments were approved in a year, but most of them were high density, it will reflect a spike or a skew in this graph because it is an average of all final plats approved that year. So you could, again, if you look back at this, 2015, we didn't see this huge spike in the number of units approved. It was just because there weren't that many that year, and the ones that were approved were multifamily. So you'll see that spike. Okay, so the last point here is what's happening with building permits, and how are multifamily residential approvals affecting the building permits. So building permits, of course, lag behind planning and zoning entitlements. Building permits for multifamily have significantly increased over the past 3 years and will likely continue to increase as a result of approvals of multifamily planning entitlements and market demand. So this graph shows that the increase to multifamily construction that reflects the increase in planning entitlements prior to these permits being issued. It also shows how future permits for multifamily are likely to continue to increase when we consider the past few years' approvals of multifamily developments. Since a permit isn't complete until a certificate of occupancy is issued, the 2020 completed permits will begin showing up in the spring of 2021. The number of pending permits in 2020 is a strong indication that the completed permits number will likely be significantly higher than previous years. So the 789 in gray and the orange or the 0 in orange in 2020, they're inversely related. They're basically pending, they're waiting to be issued. Once they get issued, that number 0 will increase dramatically and 789 will decrease dramatically. So you might have something similar to 2019. But the number looks likely to be higher than 445 in 2019. So multifamily approvals, building permits approvals are increasing still. And that is all I have for that one. Any other questions for me? Or things you want to have on this report in the future?
I have a very general question, and probably more for the discussion on the 9th, but has there been any interest in building dense residential downtown? Like an apartment building or, something like that to bring people more to the core?
We've had some interest, but very, very little. I think it's hard because our community is still small enough where the outskirts of town are cheaper to go develop at, and open areas are easier and cheaper to develop than redoing or tearing down a building and redeveloping it. So we've seen a little bit here and there, but nothing significant.
I can echo that too. So a lot of developers have come into downtown looking for those spots, but there's no bare ground to build on. So that would be the cheapest option, whereas the buildings are often historical, and to put the plumbing and everything else in at that point is very costly.
Yep.
But I think it's headed that way. I know that Beth has worked toward trying to bring some of that in to where you have that urban living, commercial downstairs and living upstairs.
Yeah.
Well, with the average age of Nampa being so low as it is, it seems like there would be a lot of interest in that minimalist type of living rather than building on an acre out by the lake.
Right. Okay. So I have one other thing.
You've already ended.
I know, I've taken up so much time. I'm sorry, Christy.
Okay.
The last thing is the 9th, the February 9th. I just wanted to touch base with you on that. And the mayor has asked me to come to you and ask for if you have any questions or thoughts about agenda items to cover. I met with my staff today, and we kind of came up with a plan. And I just wanted to present it to you, and if you could get back to me by email or phone call, and if you have any thoughts about it, I'd appreciate it. Or if you have questions or things you want to add to it. So the plan that we have for the 9th is to cover basically 3 areas. Compatibility, meaning when a development has an application, how do we ensure compatibility with what's existing there? And because sometimes we'll have the Planning and Zoning Commission approve it because it complies with comprehensive plan, it meets all the conditions, and then the city council will deny it because there's rural residential around it, right? And so as staff, we're left wondering, well, how do we, if you feel like compatibility is critical, then what does that mean? What do you need us to
You can never build anything else if you want compatibility. You got to have something in the plan or in the, that allows you to build something else. It's just like
Okay.
last meeting when we had those 4 duplexes on Roosevelt.
Mhm.
You know, if we have compatibility, they wouldn't have been built.
Yeah. So that's the question, and I think that what I'd like to do is highlight some comments in our comp plan, and then ask for the city council's vision about compatibility. And then once they tell us that, we can kind of talk about it and address some of your concerns or ideas. Okay, so that's the first one. We'll do the same thing for open space. They're asking a lot of questions about open space right now. And we'd like to highlight that from the comp plan and then ask for their
You're
vision
talking about open space within a plan.
within a development. So multifamily developments, single-family developments, what's your vision, high-level vision? And then mixed use. How do we encourage mixed use? How do we get the commercial near the residential? How do we have that mix of uses, and what does that look like? And so those are the 3 topics. If you could just get back with me on any other topics you have, or any questions you'd like to ask of the council before the meeting on the 9th, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes.
Make a motion, we approve the minutes?
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion has been approved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Ayes have it. And there's no report on council items because the city councilman could not make it tonight. And that brings us to our first item of business, which is a business item, and that is an internal document which will not be commented on by the public. So we will just run through that thing kind of quick. The first item is a subdivision final plat approval for Spring Shores Number 2 for 37 single-family residential lots and 2 common lots. Zoning district at 11th Avenue North, also known as parcel so on and so forth, with a gross density of 3.12 dwelling units per acre and a net density of 4.23. And this is presented by Kent Brown, the applicant, presenting for the applicant, Trilogy, Idaho. Kent, I know you're here. I've seen you on the TV.
He's not presenting, though. That's just a business item, so it's me.
Okay, but is he here for something else?
Yes.
Okay. All right, Christie, you have any?
I do. So, thank you, Mr. Vice Chair and Commissioners. The action requested from you tonight is a recommendation of approval or denial of the Spring Shore Subdivision Number 2 final plat. The project is comprised of 11.83 acres, proposed to be platted into 37 buildable and 2, common lots east of Franklin Boulevard and west of 11th Avenue North Extension and north of Cherry Lane. This property is located inside the city limits and is zoned RS 8.5. It's bordered on the north and east by future phases of this same subdivision and on the west by the first phase of this subdivision. It borders the Cortland Place subdivision, which is a Canyon County subdivision, to the south. The annexation and zoning to RS 8.5 was approved in May of 2006, and the ordinance and development agreement were recorded in June of 2006. The preliminary plat was revised to meet current standards and approved in October of 2019, with Phase 1 being approved in May of 2020. So the findings of fact in this case are that it is located within the city limits in an RS 8.5 zone. It conforms to the approved preliminary plat layout, and it conforms to the applicable subdivision and zoning standards for Nampa. And there were no other comments received by us after the staff report was submitted. So staff feels that it is appropriate for the commission to recommend approval of the final plat for Spring Shore Subdivision Number 2 to City Council with the conditions as listed in the staff report and any other conditions that you see fit to impose. I will stand for any questions.
Anybody online have any questions? Nobody here has any questions? Thank you, Christie.
Mhm.
What say you, gentlemen and ladies? Thank you.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion passes. The next items are all public hearing items, and the first one is a subdivision preliminary plat approval for Astaire subdivision, including 31.37 acres or 220 lots for single-family residential on 9.98 acres, and for assisted living on 10.13 acres, 3 lots for common commercial land use, 7.59 acres, and common, let's see, open space is 3/4 of an acre. Is that correct? No, sorry, it's not, well, is it? And then 62.95 in residential professional, okay, that makes sense. Zoning, and then 10.13 business community. And it's located at Midland Boulevard, also known as parcel, so on and so forth, for a mixed-use development with a gross density of 3 dwelling units per acre, net density of 6.5, located at southeast section, 1/4 of Canyon County, Idaho. Kent Brown representing. Mr. Brown? Where'd you go?
Oh, Kent, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Oh, okay.
So for the record, Kent Brown, 3161 East Springwood, Meridian, Idaho. This project is located at the northwest corner of Cherry and Midland Boulevard. Staff has done an excellent job showing the comprehensive plan and the adjacent uses. This site already had an existing development agreement that made it pretty specific as to where most of this stuff was to go. And with the zoning that has taken place, we've tried to use the Nampa standards for development and come up with a subdivision that complies with the requirements of the code and of the development agreement. We've taken the lots that are adjacent to Steel Falls and have them on 12,000 square foot lots. We have designated those as 1 stories per the development agreement. We're proposing a vinyl fence similar to what was built in Steel Falls, again, in compliance with the development agreement. Calls out, there was a rough design in the development agreement concept that we've pretty much followed. It has assisted living and some 55 or older designations for the bigger parcels that are closer and adjacent to Midland Boulevard. We tried to put a spine road that allows those uses to have traffic from and north, but at the time, the single-family residential. As you notice in the northeast corner of our site, we're
Are we losing him, or is he just not talking? Kent, can you? I think we lost him. There he is, sort of. Kent, if you can hear us, we cannot hear you. You're breaking up really bad.
Is that feedback from me somehow?
We didn't hear anything.
No, you froze.
I froze.
Well, your voice stopped.
Okay. In the northeast corner of the site, we have attached housing that is single units in a townhouses. We've tried to put those closer to those more busy roads, and We're in agreement with the staff report, and I'd stand for any questions.
I have a silly question for you, Kent. Who came up with the names of the streets?
I did.
I think you did a great job. I've never seen any of those like that before, and I think it's really cool.
Did you hear that? I did.
Yes, and I said that I like your choices of street names.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any other questions? Christie, you're taking this?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair and Commissioners. Christy Watkins, Principal Planner for the City of Nampa. The request before you this evening is for preliminary plat approval for the Astaire subdivision on the northwest corner of Cherry Lane and Midland Boulevard. Property is located inside the city limits and is zoned RP and BC, with Canyon County Ag property to the north, Canyon County residential properties to the east, BC zoned property used as commercial and multifamily to the south, and Steel Falls single-family residential subdivision to the west. The property has an extensive history of proposed and denied projects going back to 2017. In March of 2018, this property was approved for a comprehensive plan amendment, annexation and zoning to RP and BC, and a CUP for a 106-unit assisted living facility. This was recorded as Ordinance 4394 that contained a development agreement that outlines measures that were placed based upon the previous hearings and the neighbors' comments. The comprehensive plan is shown as community mixed use. The approved RP and BC zone matches that comprehensive plan future land use designation. The preliminary plat proposes 27 common lots, 1 assisted living lot, 3 commercial pad lots, and 20 single-family residential lots. 220 single-family residential lots. 130 of those are detached single-family dwellings, and 90 of them are attached single-family dwellings in 4, 5, and 6-plex structures defined as townhomes with separate ownership. So because this development was slated in conjunction with the RP zoning codes, the single-family standard building lot size is 6,000 square feet in area. So for attached units, it's 6,000 for the first 2 and 1,350 for each additional unit attached to that structure. The smallest standard buildable lot is shown as 6,000 square feet. And as you can see by the table in your staff report, it shows that the fourplex structure has a minimum of 8,700 required, but they have the lots shown at 11,600, divided into 4 to make the townhome lots. So the 5 units have a minimum of 10,050 square feet required, but they've proposed 14,827 divided by 5 to make the townhome lots. So for the 6-unit structures, they're required to have 11,400 square feet. They've proposed 16,400 square feet divided by 6 to make the 6 separate lots. So in the development agreement and in the narrative, they've referred back to the statement that says all lots adjacent to the Steel Falls subdivision are a minimum of 12,000 square feet in size, and the homes on these lots that share the boundary with Steel Falls are height restricted to single story. All master lots demonstrate the required lot width. The landscaping plan was reviewed and approved by the city forester. There are internal pathways, sidewalks, and common area proposed all throughout, connecting to the right-of-way and to the commercial lots. Compass did an analysis on this. The report shows that there are 630 housing units within 1 mile and 4,100 jobs within 1 mile, indicating that there is a need for more housing in the area. Farmland is being consumed for this project, but there is also 852 acres of farmland within 1 mile of this project. The nearest bus stop is 0.1 miles away, The nearest public school is 1.8 miles away. The nearest public park is 2.1 miles away, and the nearest grocery store is 0.3 miles away. Midland Boulevard and Cherry Lane are both on the local priority list for Compass as number 8 and number 9 respectively, but they are unfunded at this time in the Communities in Motion plan. So I put the development agreement conditions of approval up on the screen for you. Items 1, 2, and 3 were addressed in the applicant's narrative, and the plat does appear to comply with those items listed. This is in regards to lot sizes, building heights, and fencing along the boundary of Steel Falls subdivision. Items 4 through 10 are engineering department requirements. It will be up to engineering to address those items in the review of the construction drawings and with respect to our new city policies and how we use our impact fees. So we did receive public input from multiple neighbors, and their letters were included in the staff report. A summary of that is to adhere to the conditions of approval in the development agreement as determined from previous public hearings, provide an updated traffic impact study, implement the road improvements that were required, and supply adequate parking for the area. We also received comments from the Parks Department regarding 10-foot sidewalks along Cherry and Midland, from the Building Department with their standard Title IV requirements, and from the Fire and Engineering Departments outlining their standard design requirements as well. So the conditions of approval are listed in your staff report, and they include the same items as I just spoke about, the 10-foot sidewalks and the engineering requirements. So given that analysis, staff supports an approval decision of the preliminary plat for Astaire subdivision with all conditions as listed in the staff report. I've listed out the potential motion there for you since it's a long one, and I will stand for any questions.
Christie, I have a question. So in going through these letters, and especially this one from the president of Steel Falls HOA, he had some pretty specific questions, like the barrier, the fence. He referenced minutes of the Planning and Zoning Commission when we discussed that, and he even specifically mentioned Kehoe's comment about the material used for that fence. Have those specific issues been addressed with the developer and answered to the HOA
So
at this point?
Commissioner Kirkman, the conditions of approval that are listed in the staff report was for a 6-foot vinyl privacy fence.
Okay,
And that's what they did. That's what they've provided for is a 6-foot vinyl privacy fence. As far as the additional barriers that, like, I thought there was some kind of a comment about a rock wall or something along those lines. I did not see that condition in the development agreement.
Okay.
So
I just want to make sure, so was the question then answered back to the HOA president who the person who posed that question, did they understand that there was, that wasn't in the minutes, that wasn't in the development agreement?
I have not specifically addressed any of the questions back to the commenters because I wanted to make sure that we had this conversation first.
Okay. Got it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else have questions for Christie? Anybody online have questions? Do we have any public who want to speak online?
I don't see anybody. I didn't have anybody sign up yesterday or today,
Okay,
and I don't see anybody extra online that I wasn't expecting.
okay,
We do have a list of people in the room.
right. Where's the list?
Do you want to put it up?
Well, let's just start with the,
Okay. Well, I need to get out of this then.
I don't have the computer like Peggy has.
I can read them off, or we're going to put them up here on the screen if you'd like.
hard to read up there, so why don't you just call them off?
Okay. So
All those in favor?
the first person listed chooses not to speak, says they are neutral, and I'm going to ruin his last name. Mike Wilcznig. Is that right? Do you want to speak? Yes, please. Okay.
Mike, please state your name and your address when you start speaking.
Mike Welschnig, 17398 Steel Creek.
What's the last name again?
Welschnig.
Welshnick. So she was pretty close.
Okay. 17398 Steel Creek Drive
Thanks, sir.
and in Napa. I'm representing the president of the association. And the question we have was the barrier. That was brought up with Mr. Burnson on a meeting that we had here on the 10th of October. And according to Mr. Burnson, along the west property line and pathway would be provided from Lassiter Lane down to Cherry Lane and North Midland Boulevard to be developed by the applicant, about a 15-foot wide with a barrier to provide the Steel Falls residents more privacy. The ownership of the pathway and the liability issues would still need to be ironed out. So that was the, it would be a split block wall with some color, either 6 foot or 8 foot tall. That's what Mr. Mr. Bernstein, he represented the developer, I believe, on that. And the other thing we're concerned about is the parking. The apartments that were put in across the street, if you go on their website, the residents have no parking at all there. And they were parking on the street, and you people were kind enough to go ahead and put some no parking signs up there with that 50-mile-an-hour stretch going through there. And the speed limit is now down to 35. But people have no parking, just want to make sure the developer who's put in this together is the same developer that put the apartment houses together, is going to make adequate parking for the residences there. That is a real key problem of
I will
parking
ask Mr. Brown if that's being taken care of.
on that thing there. We don't object to anything at all on it. We want to make sure that the landscaping is followed up. They did not follow up with the landscaping on the apartments. They were going to put a left turn lane, curbing, and Mr. Bernstein said that the entrance there would be, what they're using as the entrance now is actually the exit. They were going to go ahead and put the out where the light is going to the hospital, but they're using the back way now to get out of the property. And it can create quite a traffic commotion there. Fortunately, the speedometer or the speed limit has been put down, so we don't have 50-mile-an-hour zooming through there now. But the developer did not follow through with the landscaping, the curbing on that development there, and we want to make sure that he does not do the same thing on the other side.
The same developer?
Same developer.
We might be able to ask maybe Daniel about the traffic and entry, exit and all that.
So I guess, yeah, in a nutshell, we're kind of looking at, are we looking at a vinyl fence? We're looking at the barrier that they proposed. I thought maybe the barrier would be there with a walkway going through there, maybe going to the park or something like that between the houses and that there, so.
I know Mr. Brown, the developer, talked about that there would be a 6-foot vinyl fence, but we'll ask him about the barrier when we get done with the public hearing. He'll have a chance to comment, so I'm
That'll
sure
be
he's
fine.
making notes to address some of this stuff.
Okay, well, thank you very
You bet.
much, Matthew. Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Next, Christie?
So next is Lyle Watson, wishes to speak.
Good evening, gentlemen. My name's Lyle Watson, 10132 Cherry Lane, Nampa. I know what Mike was talking about. We attended that meeting as well. Around our property, as well as my folks' property, they promised us a berm around our property. On ours at 10132, we're going to be next to the commercial side of it. They promised us a berm along with a fence across the top of that berm. The gentleman that promised that to us was the gentleman that was representing the builder at that time. He was out of Utah. His name escapes me. He promised us that here at the meeting, and then he was then no longer representing the builder. They brought in another one. We've tried to follow up to make sure that those things were carried down through the pipeline. We have not seen or heard of anything other than this 6-foot vinyl fence, which isn't what we were originally promised. Another thing, Jason Ramsey is the gentleman that generally does this contracting work. Jason Ramsey is also the gentleman that built the apartments across from us. And like Mike said before me, the parking in the front of our place has just been horrendous. The traffic, they didn't follow through on that project, so we are concerned that they're not going to follow through with the berm and the fencing, the privacy fencing that they had promised us around both 17293 Midland Boulevard as well as 10132 Cherry Lane. Okay. Any questions?
I have a question. So the promises that were made, was that during public hearing?
During
or was
the
that something
public
you guys
hearing, yes.
discussed in the hall?
It was discussed in the hall, and then it was discussed at the meeting.
Thanks, sir.
You
Did
got
your wife
anything
wish to
else?
speak also?
Pardon me?
Is your wife, she's next on? No?
No.
Wife said no. Christine?
Okay. So that would be Karen Watson said no. Spencer Watson says no on the check-in sheet. Correct? Okay. Elroy Huff? You're okay? Okay. Robert Silva?
Robert Silva, 17287 Steel Creek. Yeah, I have been at most of the meetings, and, you know, with Bernstein, Gerald Bernstein was representing the same guy who built the apartment, same guy that's doing this development. And the promises they made, I could not believe when they built the apartments, 260 units, they did not put a turn lane onto Cherry Lane. You go a mile down Cherry Lane, they build 15 houses, and they put a turn lane down there further east on Cherry Lane. The building department said they did a traffic study, and the traffic study indicated they did not need an access, a turn lane onto Cherry Lane. If that's the case, I just hope we do a better job reviewing the traffic study for this development, because what we had there on the apartments is just not acceptable.
Our engineer is sitting right there. We'll ask him.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
Thank
sir.
you.
And the last one I have is Marjorie Anderson. She says she doesn't, it says no to speaking, but,
Okay.
and that's it.
All right. Kent, do you want to speak first, and then we get engineering? Kent, you want to speak first, then we'll get engineering, or what? Oh, Kent. Lost him again?
You're muted, Kent.
I'm technology challenged here.
Welcome to the club.
I guess I don't know where to start. The wall thing came up in a discussion I had with Christy, yet the development agreement only speaks to the vinyl fence, and that's why we proposed the vinyl fence. I have not talked with the person that did the original presentations, so I have reached out to, and so has the engineer that got me involved with the developer, to find out if there was some type of wall that was promised. Same with Lyle's comment about the berm. I don't see why we couldn't do that. That's pretty easy thing to do, but I'm not aware of that. It's definitely not in the development agreement. I just tried to follow the development agreement as closely as possible. Looking at those items, the discussion about the landscaping and parking, in doing a subdivision, which the apartments, as you guys had earlier discussion with Mr. Ashby earlier today, subdivisions, they're looking to see that I put in all the landscaping that's required. And they're also looking at these commercial sites that are on there that they have adequate parking. From a residential standpoint, which most of the site is, the landscaping and fencing that we proposed would all be installed because that's a requirement of the subdivision that has to be done. Traffic, I talked to Daniel, and Daniel said that he could speak to all of those things with regards to the traffic study. Is there something that I missed? I was between my phone trying to hear what was going on in the meeting, and did I miss some item that was brought to your attention?
You covered the items that I had written down. If anybody else remembers anything? Yes.
Yeah, Kent, this is Matt. On the parking, so when you're figuring, I mean, the single-family residential, the parking kind of take care of itself, but in these townhome duplex buildings, when you're calculating the parking, are you the one that's calculating it, or is there an architect that calculates it? How is that figured? And I assume that it's per code.
So we at this point, we don't have any apartments. What we have is single-family dwellings. So the streets and so forth with those, I don't know that we have a plan that we can look at, but generally those are 2 parking stalls. And because they're so close, they definitely do need to have garages for those. I don't see that necessarily being a concern. The ones that I think end up being the big issues is the assisted living facility and the 55 or older, and then the BC zoned stuff. Those would have parking requirements, but I think, as I understand, you have a requirement for so much parking that comes about in doing one of those facilities.
Yeah. So the duplex side, those will have garages. Did I hear you right on that?
That's correct.
Okay.
Those are all just standard townhouses with garages. There is some additional parking spots that we have for visitors, but for the most part, it's not any different than any single. They're in most jurisdictions are viewed as single family because they're townhouses and they're sold. What makes those really enticing is that it gives someone an ability to purchase without having a bigger lot and so forth.
Okay, I guess my question stemmed a little bit from what they're talking about with the apartment complex, where are we selling short?
I found a few apartment complexes near you.
Okay.
Say that again.
Before you were interrupted by Google.
I was interfered with Google. I told you I'm technology challenged here.
So thinking about the apartment complex across the street that they keep talking about, the parking problem, you're usually figuring the number of parking stalls plus some guests. And I just worry that, we're shortchanging the number of guests that would be visiting to that apartment complex. And that's part of why they're having such a problem with the parking, because they're not allowing enough of the guest stalls to be able to cover it. And so with those duplexes, that's where my question was tending to. But, if they have garages, I get that, and that should be fine.
Yeah, these all have garages. It's not on-street parking for that.
Okay. Thanks, Kent.
Anybody else have any questions for Christie before we get Daniel up here?
Would you like more information about the parking at the apartment
Oh,
complex?
if you have it, yes, yeah.
So code required that they put in 562 parking spaces. They put in 586 parking spaces.
This is across the street.
They are overparked. I don't know who was parking on Cherry Lane. I can only assume that it's the people that lived in those units that were abutting Cherry Lane, and they were not ambitious enough to park in the parking lot. But I don't know that. There should be adequate parking in there. Now, I don't know who's parking on Cherry.
Okay.
And there are no parking signs there now, so.
There are no parking signs, okay.
Thanks, Christie.
Once you're up, that's it. Sorry. But your wife can come up and say it. Yes, sir.
So, Commissioner Kehoe, the questions regarding traffic, a traffic study has been provided for the development. We had comments on that. We received the revised traffic study today and have not had a time to review it to verify that all of the comments were addressed. The recommendations that the traffic study that we have given the comments on, there are a number of background traffic issues that the developer is not responsible to mitigate based on what the problems there are now, our codes and the way that our impact fee ordinances and stuff are done. We are not, the developer is not on the hook to fix problems that are there before the developer was there. So the impacts that the traffic study has identified that they will be required to do is a westbound right turn lane at Steel Creek and Cherry. So the entrance to Steel subdivision, that is one thing that they will be required to do. They will be required to put an additional westbound left turn lane at the intersection of Cherry and Midland. And there are a few other things that are related to the new proposed site accesses that are there. And so those are, generally speaking, the traffic mitigations that this development will be required to undertake. As part of this development and the entire area for this, the developer, when they came in for the apartments, they did not want to do a full traffic study for all the property that they owned there at that time. And so one of the things that we required of them was that when they added phases of their development, so the apartment complex was the first thing they did, this is the next, and there's additional property beyond this that they would ultimately be working on, that each of those previous phases are not considered background traffic. They are part of the development traffic, so that it triggers anything for the entire development will trigger, and the developer will be on the hook for, rather than piecemealing it and saying, well, that was background traffic. That's not what's happening in this case. Generally speaking, the question regarding the turn lane for the apartment entrance, there is certainly some assumptions made on traffic routing when they do a traffic study, just because it's not there, and we don't necessarily control all of human behavior when they drive. And so one of the things we can certainly ask that they relook at is that turn lane analysis there, with some updated traffic numbers based on the actual traffic pattern that we're seeing there.
Okay, that'd be a great idea.
So we can certainly talk to the traffic engineer on that. Other than that, are there any additional questions regarding the traffic concerns that were raised?
Anybody else? Anybody online? Guess not. Thank you.
Okay.
Make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion has been made to close the public hearing and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
What?
We had somebody that still.
Oh, did your wife?
It's not been seconded yet. Oh, it hasn't been.
Right. Did you want to speak, ma'am? Okay. Right. Point of order?
Commissioner, if you open it back up to public testimony from the general public, you have to open it back up for everyone else to be able to speak again. And because the reason is you have to allow them to comment on the new information, including the applicant.
We'll stick to the original that you, once you're up, you're up.
If you want to let her speak, you can. You just have to
Put a
give
cog in the
everyone
wheel or
else the
something that
opportunity
every
again.
time we have a meeting, we're going to come up with this, so.
Yeah.
I think we just stick with what we've been doing for years. Sorry, ma'am.
Adam?
Okay, the motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
Aye.
Michelle, did you vote? Is there anybody else online?
That's it.
Okay.
Aye.
There you go. Thank you. So the ayes have it. The next item on the agenda. What?
That was just to close the public
That was
hearing.
just the public hearing.
Oh, I'm sorry. Want to vote? Yes, sorry. Okay. Discussion. Anybody want to discuss anything?
Yeah, quick question. The development agreement, and I don't know if you can pull that up real quick. I don't know if you're right, if it's right at your fingertips. But I heard a couple of times that the 6-foot fence is in the development agreement, and I read through this and I'm scanning it over again and again. Is there, I must be missing it because I don't see it specifically in the DA.
Commissioner Kirkman, it is under the conditions of approval, item number 3.
Christie says that it's there.
Well, I'm not, not second guessing her. I just was trying to find it. Okay.
It's a big document, so it's at the end
Yeah.
of the document.
Okay.
Anybody else?
Well, I do have questions about how to resolve this Mr. Burnson that made promises and doesn't seem to know, that took place. But if it was part of a public hearing, then, there should be record of that we could review. And I don't know how that plays out with if Mr. Burnson is even a part of the team anymore, and is that why he's not a part of the team? Because he promised things that weren't, I don't know. So,
Valid point.
these individuals have been, told that something was going to happen one way, but, if it's part of the record, then I think it has to be held to. So I don't know necessarily how to rule on it or to say, because we don't have that record in front of us to be able to decipher.
See, and that's what I'm having a little bit difficulty with too, is if it is in the record, when it goes back to the planning and zoning department to sit down and put this DA together and then goes to the city council and the mayor for approval, I mean, what does that process look like? And maybe for the public to kind of understand that a little bit more, I mean, how does stuff that's talked about here get into the DA? And to make sure that what was discussed is actually in there. Who reviews it? Is it just a plant? Is it just a department in a city function and the developer, or is the public then brought into that at that point also?
So,
I wouldn't think so, but because this is their opportunity for that.
Commissioners, this is probably something that's a good opportunity for you guys to take a look at the motions that you make and how you word them. Generally, the development agreement is taken from conditions that are listed in the staff report based on review of the project, direction from you all or city council to add those conditions in. I don't know, of course, I'm not the staff person that wrote the development agreement, so I'm not sure if they went back and reviewed that conversation. A lot of things are discussed during a public hearing. If it isn't directed as part of the motion to be added as a condition, it likely won't get added.
That's
So
understandable.
it really would depend on how the motion was made.
I think from what I remember, and I don't remember this specific item, but I think we're pretty good about adding those things as we talk about them. Somebody's writing down, and I think we've been pretty good.
Well, and
I don't know
it
the
just,
specific,
right.
Council would ultimately have the last say on what was added to the development agreement, and I don't know what that conversation was like.
I just, in the letter that was submitted by the president of the HOA, he was very specific and quoted a commissioner on planning and zoning as to what was stated. So I'm assuming that they went back to the minutes to get that quote. And so that's where I have if it was in there and it quoted directly from the meeting and it didn't end up in the DA, that's kind of where I'm wondering. But the process makes sense. I understand exactly what you're saying, Christie, as far as that goes.
But Christie, now if we make this motion, we need to put that in as a condition that the block wall be.
That's certainly your prerogative.
I'm of the opinion that, I kind of want to say, hey, let's continue this until we can investigate what was actually said. But, I guess you can put it in the motion as well. But like Kent said, putting a berm and putting the fence on top of the berm, that's not a big deal. But if we're talking about building a rock wall, that's going to be very, very expensive.
huge.
And so what was promised, and I think it's up to us to make a good faith effort to try and investigate this. And these individuals have come and said, hey, this was said, and they say that there's a record of it. So, but I get what you said, Christie, that if it was discussed and agreed upon, it would have made it into the motion at the time as a condition. And so how do we do that,
That, again, that's your prerogative. If you'd like to continue it for more information, that's up to you.
If we continue, it would be the 9th meeting or some other time? You can have it by the 9th.
If you wouldn't mind, I'd like it to be some other time.
Okay,
I've got a pretty heavy
all right.
list on the 9th.
Yeah, we don't know what's on there, so we can't say. What do you guys think?
Speak to,
Oh, it's a table. You're tabling your decision. It's not a continuance because you've closed the public hearing.
What do you guys think? What do you guys think?
well, I hate that, I want to do justice for these people, but I hate to put the brakes on for Mr. Brown, who's done all the work. So I don't know exactly how to do it. We're just making it a condition that, a condition of the approval that it be investigated, and
If we've discussed this through everybody and everybody feels comfortable, then we need to make a motion. And if you would like, why don't you make the motion and add what you like?
I'm not quite sure how to say it.
Well, I'm sure Christie, your director, can help us out, right?
I haven't listened to the past meetings, so I don't know what was said.
I don't either. But it seems to me, I do remember something about the wall and not a fence. In the back of my mind, I do remember something about a wall, but I just can't grab exactly what it was. But there's a wall in my brain someplace on this.
There's a wall in your brain.
Yeah, well,
Well,
I don't know, I'm kind of on the, add a berm with some landscaping and a vinyl fence on top is one thing, but you start talking about a rock wall, 6 or 8 feet high, and that's especially that long a stretch, and it's going to be an extremely pretty penny.
then would you like to make the motion without it?
well, just going to this letter, and again, what's already been submitted as part of the record. He quotes, Mr. Burnson replied, and we quote, this is, that it would be a split block wall with some color, either 6 foot or 8 foot tall, unquote.
So a split face CMU wall is basically what they're saying, it sounds like. It's concrete block. It's basically that rough concrete block is what he's,
block, so you don't have to do
split
anything.
face.
So, commissioners,
Yes.
this does go forward to, no, it doesn't. It's just a preliminary plat. So it does not go to city council, so your decision will be the final decision.
How long would that wall be? What type
I
of
don't know that
distance?
that matters, though, at this point. I think it sounds like they have to go back and, we can ask staff to go back and investigate it. 'Cause it shouldn't matter to us what it costs if they agreed to it. Then it just needs to be reviewed and put back into the agreement.
That's the thing that I worry about, though, is that, like what Christie said, if it was actually agreed to, it should be, it
Should
would have been in
exist,
the
yeah.
conditions. And that's the trouble that we have.
But it sounds like maybe Mr. Burnson was interpreting an image that Steve was looking at that point, and coming back and saying, this is what it'll be based on Steve's question of what that buffer was.
And so my instinct is to say that we put it as a condition of approval that they add the berm and the landscaping with the fence on top of the wall, on top of the berm, as Mr. Brown has agreed to, that wouldn't be a big deal. Because there is no official record, at least that we've been provided, that says that there was a split-face wall that was going to be created.
Yeah, short of us going back and listening to the hearing ourselves, there's not really a way to do that anyway.
So make the decision based upon the documentation that we've been provided.
If this is tabled and when we address it again, can those minutes from from that particular meeting be added to this so we can see them at that point when we get the,
We can certainly provide a level of transcription for you.
okay. Maybe that's,
I can agree now that we should probably do that, in all fairness to everybody. It may not be fair to the developer because he's wasting time and money, but it's the people that live nearby and have asked for it, and if we said that, then we should hold their feet to the fire.
What date, Christie?
I'm sorry?
What was the date that we would agree to?
Is that the 23rd? What's the second meeting in
Second meeting
February?
in February.
I'll make the motion. Mr. Vice Chair, I'd like to make the motion that we table this until the second meeting in February 23rd.
Mhm.
Well, you're a second.
yes.
Second.
I'll second that.
Oh,
Did Michelle, was that just your voice?
Do I need to clarify what
Yeah.
I'm asking for there too? In order to allow staff enough
In
time
order-
to review
Yes,
the previous transcription.
yes.
Okay, and Michelle has seconded that.
So just to be clear, for those that are here also, that 23rd meeting is, we won't, do we open that up for public hearing again? Because we've already done that here. So that, at that 23rd meeting in February is just to review transcripts and for us to continue what we're doing here. The public hearing is already done, so there won't be public hearing on the 23rd. It's just for us to look at what was said or not said and.
But they still have the opportunity to go into city council? Oh, no, they're not.
No.
They're
It's our
not.
decision.
Yeah, they're
Decision
done.
will
It's
be
your
their
decision.
But it will allow us to look at what was brought up during public hearing at this meeting and determine then a decision to be made on the 23rd.
And I think we'll make the best faith decision. We're not going to, you know.
It's
I
giving-
think we're being fair and honest tonight, so I think we'll continue that. We're not going to try and shove something down your throats. We'll do what the law says we have to do.
No, so it's giving the public the benefit of the doubt, and we just want to make sure that
Right,
that's
but it's
what we
not,
said.
we're not underhanding them by cutting them out of the process.
Okay,
Okay.
all right. Thank you.
Did we vote on that?
we need to vote.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 All those opposed? Item passes. Okay, thank you for coming in, those of you that were here for that application. The next application is a conditional use permit for a in-home daycare for 7 to 12 children in a RD duplex residential zone district at 3424 Greenhurst Road. For, oh boy, Miss Sanchez. Sorry, I don't know how to pronounce your first name, Miss Sanchez. Is the applicant present? Is the applicant online?
She is online.
He's online, okay.
Dionisia?
How are you,
Dionisia?
how about we say Ms. Sanchez? Are you ready to speak on what you want us to do for you tonight, Ms. Sanchez?
No. Somebody else.
You say she's online?
She is the DN on there.
She needs to press the mute button or unpress the mute button?
She is muted. You can see the little icon. Right down at the very bottom where her name is.
Through the microphone.
Ms. Sanchez, you have to depress the mute button so it's not on.
Hello.
There you are. Tell us what you'd like to do, please.
My grandma doesn't speak English, so I'm gonna help her.
That'd be fine. Thank you for helping.
Okay. They told her to go in this meeting because they were gonna ask her some questions about the daycare she wants to do.
Yep, that's what we're asking you. What does she want to do? We need her name and address, too, for the record.
Can you repeat that again?
Yes, we need your name and her name and address, and then you're speaking for her behalf, so your name, and then what is it that she wants to do?
Okay. My name is Orliana, Orlyana.
Thank you. Address.
Dile, no, lo de la guardería, el permiso de...
That's all right?
Hello.
Yeah.
Miguel.
We need the address, please.
3424 East Greenhurst Road.
Thank you very much. And then what is it you'd like to do?
Daycare.
A daycare.
Okay, a daycare for 7 to 12 children, or less or more?
We cannot hear you.
Did you say they can't hear me?
Can't hear you, yeah.
Did you want the daycare for 7 to 12 children, more or less than that?
Hello.
Hello?
It's cutting out.
Oh. Mr. Director, what's your resolution?
We don't know if that's on our end or on their end, though, right? Because it could be low bandwidth on their end that they're not getting the. Hold on.
Can you hear me on this mic?
The applicant, can you hear the gentleman that just spoke?
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. The commissioner asked if you were wanting the daycare for 7 to 12 children, or more or less.
It's just 7 to 12 children.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And what? Oh.
Go down and use that mic.
You know, do you mind repeating it, or somebody repeating it?
You're cutting out again.
Okay.
I can repeat your questions if you have them.
Does anybody have any other questions of the applicant?
All right.
Seems pretty clear cut. Okay, we'll talk about this and get back to you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Stay on the line now, yeah, don't go away. Okay, what do we have there, staff?
Thank you, Vice Chair and Commissioners. The action requested from you tonight is the approval or denial of the conditional use permit for an in-home daycare for 7 to 12 children in an RD zoning district at 3424 East Greenhurst Road for Dionysia J. Navarro de Sanchez. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right or not.
Sounded perfect.
Sounded better than I did.
I will bring to your attention that the public hearing notice sent stated that the CUP was for 8 to 12 children, when our code states that CUPs are required for home occupation daycares for 7 to 12 children. It wasn't really an issue, we didn't see, because it was on the smaller side. The property is located inside city limits and is zoned RD. It is designated as medium density residential in the future land use map. The lot is 0.26 acres and is surrounded by RD to the north, enclave properties to the east, west, and south, as well as some RS6 zone properties to the south. All public utilities are available in Greenhurst and public services are available. The property is off of Greenhurst, which is classified as a minor arterial street. There is a parking lot to the east of the property that was originally used to serve the veterinarian clinic that was previously occupied the building. This was when the subject lot was, and the lot to the north were one lot. It has since been split, leaving the parking lot on the adjoining lot. So the parking lot is not part of this lot. The regulations used to evaluate this application are located in sections 10.1, 10.3, and 10.25 of the Nampa City Code. 10.1 sets forth the criteria for home occupation. 10.3 establishes that a CUP is required for home occupation daycare for 7 to 12 children, and states that a caregiver's children under the age of 6 count against the number of daycare children. 10.25 outlines the criteria of approval. The use must be compatible with and not adversely affect the livability of the surrounding neighborhood. We received correspondence from the following. Roberta Konzek is the owner of the adjoining parcel that the parking sits on. The owner of that lot stated that using the parking lot would not be an option. Fencing has been installed to prevent the use of the parking lot along the property line. Nampa Engineering stated that patron access should utilize the existing access and parking area located to the east. They can't park along Greenhurst or use the residential driveway access in front of the house. Regarding access from South Lexus Way, engineering stated that access management policy excludes them from an access within 150 feet of the collector or arterial. Greenhurst is classified as a minor arterial, so that would prevent them from accessing South Lexus Way, having an access from that road. The north property line of East Greenhurst Road is 118 feet, so that is less than 150 feet. Other correspondence, the building department stated that they are subject to Title IV of the building regulations, and the fire department would require a passing fire inspection. From a land use standpoint, the location is along a minor arterial street, which seems to be the major issue. There's a question about access, which would need to be resolved. Obviously, the owner has installed a 6-foot vinyl fence to mitigate concerns about safety along Greenhurst, any children that may wander. Compared to the surrounding land uses, there does not appear to be any conflicts or concerns about surrounding land uses. The engineering division has requested that they use the parking lot, but that is out of the question for the owner of the said parking lot. The alternatives are that they check for an existing easement for access on that road, or find another way that the city can agree to. Should the Planning and Zoning Commission vote to approve the conditional use permit, staff recommends the following conditions. Compliance with building code. Patrons would be restricted from parking on Greenhurst or using the residential driveway off of Greenhurst. Provide documentation of an agreement to use the parking area or work with the planning department or on other options as necessary. Have a passing and fire inspection in addition to being restricted to this location and any other conditions that you may wish to impose. I will stand for any questions.
Any questions for Parker?
Yeah, I have a question. So the parking, just looking at the map. So with the daycare, parking, the way I understand it is stop, go grab your kids, get in the car and go. Is that considered parking to the city?
Commissioner, I think the main issue is having a place for cars to pull off from Greenhurst to make that drop off.
Right, so if they dropped off and picked up on Lexus, is that still non-compliant with the city's definition of parking?
And we'll get the official version from the city engineer.
Commissioner Kehoe and Commissioner Kirkman, Lexi's Way is a private street, not owned by the city, and without any rights for access from this property.
Well, that changes everything then. So to the west is private, to the east is private, and to the south is Greenhurst, and to the north is...
Neighbor with a fence.
Yeah.
So there's not really any way they can access this then?
They could use drones maybe, drop in and...
I mean, how would they, if they can't use the driveway that's in front of the house? Are they just gonna have to do something that's bigger, wider, a turnaround?
So the driveway, there is a driveway there, and that's the legal access for that parcel. Our concerns are that depending on how many family groups there are in if it's two families totaling 8 kids, or 3 families, and they don't all come at the same exact time, it's likely not an issue. But if it's 8 people coming all at the same time, where are they going to be able to pull in off of the road, drop their kid off, leave, that type of
Can you ask
concern?
the applicant and...
Absolutely. If the applicant has a answer for how that's going to look, then certainly that's under your guys' purview to.
So that would be one of those that if the applicant would said, well, we're just gonna double the size of the driveway then.
So the additional concern there is obviously backing onto Greenhurst during those peak times, and we would not approve a circle driveway at that, because the current location of the driveway doesn't comply with our standards. If they were to look at doing something and put some parking area in like a hammerhead T off of that driveway on their property outside the right-of-way, that's one way that they could address that and make that more work better for the operation of their establishment as well as the street adjacent.
Let me ask you a question, if I may, Daniel. If we approve this and then the applicant has 8 people coming one after the other and there's some kind of a major collision, are we going to be standing liable for that because we made the decision to let that go and we probably should have known better?
Generally speaking, I wouldn't say that we would likely be directly liable. Traffic, is the traffic laws are there and people are required to abide by them.
Yield the right way.
Right. And so typically it would not be something where the city would be liable. It would be the person that was cited for not complying, not paying attention, pulling out when they shouldn't have, that kind of stuff.
So if we approve this, it would not come back and bite us for that reason.
I don't see where it likely would. I mean, it's always possible, but
How much money in your bank account?
I'm not the attorney. I'm only the engineer, so not that much.
Okay, all right. Parker, why don't you ask Mrs. Sanchez if she understands the limited parking situation and she can address that with having lesser number of families coming to drop off the kids? And let's ask that question. How many does she think will come with 3 to a car or 4 to a car or whatever?
Mrs. Sanchez, do you hear that question?
Yes.
Okay. Did you hear the question?
Yes.
What is your answer, Mrs. Sanchez?
There's gonna be about 6.
Cars?
Can
Is
you
that
repeat that again?
six cars?
Yes, 6.
Ask where they will be dropping the kids off.
Where would you be dropping the kids off?
That's the question we have.
Dile que sí, que esa es la pregunta que tenemos y qué orientaciones nos pueden dar ellos, porque desconocía lo que está pasando ahorita con los
Because she
estacionamientos.
didn't know that both sides were private.
Okay. Thank you, Mrs. Sanchez.
Thank you.
Yeah, is there anybody online that would like to speak?
I don't have anybody listed.
Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak on behalf or against this applicant and their proposal? Hearing none. Engineering is coming back.
So, Commissioners, we can certainly work with the applicant to try to come to a reasonable solution that will provide for our comfort with the traffic operation there. If you aren't comfortable without knowing that, which I certainly understand, it could be a similar situation where you could continue the public hearing until a later meeting, and we can discuss with the applicant, potentially meet them out on site and look at what could be done there and judge whether they're willing to do that prior to you approving this.
Okay. Does anybody else concur with that decision?
I think it was safe to just close the public hearing and then table.
Yep.
Myself.
Well,
Go ahead.
rather than continue the public hearing?
Yeah, there's nobody
Okay.
speaking on it anyway,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I think we'd be safe. So I'd make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
All those in favor of closing the public hearing, say aye.
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 Karen, do you have a date for us?
Not the 9th.
Not the 9th.
Go the same one on the 23rd?
Okay. Somebody want to make the motion to,
Mr. Vice Chair, I'd make a motion that we table our decision for the conditional use permit for an in-home daycare for 8 to 12 children for Dionisia J. and Navarro de Sanchez, CUP 20420, until February 23rd to give engineering an opportunity to meet with the applicant to decide whether or not they can figure out the traffic.
I'll second.
motion has been made and seconded. Karen, you get who seconded? All those in favor, say aye.
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 All those opposed? Thank you.
Before we move on, could you explain to the applicant?
Yes, please, Ms. Sa-
Yeah.
yeah, thank you.
Mrs. Sanchez? Are you still there?
Yes.
So the commission has decided to table the decision till a later date so that we can work out plans for the parking situation.
Okay.
So I will be in contact with you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Okay, the next item is annexation and zoning to light industrial zoning district at 245 North Happy Valley Road and 4513 Airport Road, lots P, Q, and Z of the Homeacres Number 2 subdivision, 4.45 acres, for Peterson Holdings. Would you like to come forward, sir? And
Well, I ran into a deal here, last week that was kind of concerning for me. And then this 245, the same man bought it and same developer's developing the property. And at the bottom end of this 245, there's a ditch that goes in, it goes into a pipe.
Give us your name and address for the record.
Gene Hazen, 3904 Airport Road.
Thank you.
Commissioners, I'm not sure he's the applicant. Are you the applicant?
I don't know, I just want to talk to the front desk here, and he told me to come in here.
Okay, yeah, the applicant is online.
Okay.
Oh,
Nick
Sorry, yeah,
Barnes.
wait just a few minutes and we'll open the public hearing.
thank you for your coming up and doing your thing.
Is there something in the water tonight?
I hear a lot of noise out there. I don't know. So, do you have the applicant, Mr. Director, online? Can he tell us what he wants to do?
So I think he's saying that, he says, please don't skip over us. We need to get our topic covered. I can answer questions if they have any through chat, but for some reason, I guess we have a bad cable, so the audio is really bad and we can't hear them. And they type like the window. He says, I can type like the window. He says, we are having major audio issues, major static. So he doesn't want to skip it.
It's not fair.
But he's willing to type out any questions
But how do
or
we
answers to
know
questions.
that it's the applicant then?
So, he just doesn't want to skip over, he doesn't want us to skip him tonight. Would he be amenable maybe to moving
Going on
this
the phone?
down the road or
Yeah,
calling
I can have
in?
him
Or
on the phone. That's a good
Yeah.
idea. Nick, if you can hear me, why don't you call me? I gave him my phone number earlier today, so.
Is that part of the public record, Rodney, your phone number?
I'd prefer not to put it out there.
Can you also put his chat in case he does type out a question?
Yeah,
Can you
that's a good idea.
put that up on the screen too?
Mark, do you want me to just share my screen or? I can't put his chat. Okay, I will then. Okay, here he is. Nick, is that you?
Yes, sir. We've got major static.
Okay, I can hear you great, so I'll turn the phone down towards you if you want to speak.
Perfect. Yeah, we can do that. And I'll try to hear. It's kind of intermittent. I'll try to hear what I can when in between static.
Okay, go ahead.
So, I guess just briefly on the piece of property, we've actually scaled back a bit, and we were looking to do a couple of commercial buildings over there. 3 to be exact. I think we're trying to scale back to 2. And in fact, I'm going to end up being one of the end users there. I've got one of our companies over on Summit Lane, and so we're going to sell that building off, and I need to move that company over into a bigger facility with much more parking. So 2 light industrial pieces. I think that's what the future comp plan calls for already anyways, for that area, if I remember right. And then we do have a direct path to annexation based on previous meetings we've had with that 4513 airport piece that connects between there and MAF, the corner of Happy Valley and MAF. So I believe we're within the confines of, having the ability to get, to annex it in. Yeah, that's about all I got.
That it?
Any questions, commissioners?
Anybody have any questions of the applicant?
Not right now.
Ask him to stand by, please.
Nick, if you'll just stay online here or on the phone, we might have questions for you a little bit.
Absolutely, I'll be here.
Okay.
Mr. Ashby.
Okay. Commissioners, Rodney Ashby for the record, Director of Planning and Zoning. Let me see if I can move this up. So the project before you is an annexation and zoning to IL, Light Industrial Zoning District at 245 North Happy Valley Road and 4513 Airport Road. On the original, I should say the applicant submitted 2 applications for annexation and a legal description that included both properties. All the legally required neighbors were contacted via postal communication, and the appropriate boundaries were correctly shown on a map posted on the property. But the property description only listed the area of one of the properties. So it actually showed, I think it was 2.97 or something like that instead of the 4.45 acres. But the property description only listed the area of the one property. We have corrected the description to include the area of both properties and believe all other information on the notice, including an aerial showing the correct area, was correct. Staff believes sufficient information was provided to ensure appropriate legal notice to neighbors. So I just highlighted that on the, it's not showing. Mark? There we go. I just highlighted that on your screen there, the 4.45. I think we just listed it as 2 point something. So that's the correction we did. And then the applicant has stated that their purpose for the property is for future development of light industrial buildings and a possible gas station at this location. The comprehensive plan does show as industrial. You can see that on the screen. The proposed zoning is IL, or light industrial. And you can see to the west there, it connects directly with the IL. The size is 4.45. The existing zoning is county rural residential. To the north is county rural residential zoning. It's large lot county residential. To the south is county rural residential as well. To the east is Happy Valley Road and county rural residential. There is a commercial building and a residential home to the east. And then to the west is a vacant lot zoned IL, light industrial. Public utilities, city sewer, and pressure irrigation systems are not immediately available to the site. Utilities are presently located. Domestic water is, I can show you just on the screen. It's probably easier that way. So the purple is the irrigation, the blue is the water, and the yellow or the green is the sewer. Public services, we had no response from city police or fire, but they've made their standard statement about needing 1.5 officers per 1,000 people. Since this is IL, really not a big concern here. And transportation access is taken from both Airport Road, minor arterial speed limit, which is 35 miles per hour, and North Happy Valley Road, a minor arterial speed limit 35 miles per hour. Right-of-way dedication will be required at time of development to ensure 50 feet from center line on both roadways. And when development occurs, the city will evaluate their access at that point. Here are the engineering division's conditions, as well as buildings, and the Nampa Meridian Irrigation District's conditions. And those are all in your staff report, and happy to cover them if you desire.
Anybody need that? Okay. Thanks anyway.
Applicable regulations, Idaho State Code says that in order for a property to be annexed as a Category A, it shall have consent of all property owners being annexed, which this does, be contiguous with the city limits or be enclaved by other properties so annexed, and this does. The zoning must be consistent with the adopted comprehensive plan future land use map, and it does. So these are the staff recommended findings as contained in your staff report, and I can look at the uses that are permitted and conditioned if you would prefer, but that's also in your staff report. And here are the recommended conditions of approval in your staff report and a potential motion for your consideration.
Okay. Any questions of staff?
One quick question. That new light at Airport in Happy Valley, is that a city installation or is that a county installation?
The answer is not as quick as the question was.
Sorry.
Oh, I got to come to the mic.
Just
So
throw you
it's
the
on the
mic.
record.
Throw you the mic.
Was installed by the Nampa Highway District.
Oh, okay.
We are working with them to maintain it because they don't have signal techs and that kind of things. But it was paid for and put in by the Highway District.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Rodney, anybody online?
Nope.
Is there anybody in the audience who would like to speak in favor or against this proposal? Hearing none, make a motion to, yeah. Forgive me, please, sir. Come back up.
Now it's your turn. He is, yeah.
Okay,
Name and
we'll
address
go,
for the record, sir.
we'll go back to, what I was saying. At 245 of Happy Valley toward the end of where the two properties were.
No, what was your name and address?
Gene Hazen, 3908 Airport.
Thank you, sir.
Anyway, where those two properties meet, or maybe a little one way or the other, there's a ditch that goes down through there, and it goes underneath the airport, and it dumps all the waste ditch from all the irrigation systems and floods. When we have a lot of rain, that's where it goes. And so we need to make sure that that's kept open, or whatever they have to do to keep that water so it's running correct. And the developer that's on 44th Street right now, which is the Petersons that own it, those people right there, the developer went up there and he tore that whole ditch out. And so all the neighborhood's freaking out because everything that's running down that ditch now, they pump out of that ditch onto their yards. And anytime that there's a flood above that property on 44th, it goes down to that ditch and goes under the airport. And he stopped that. But I talked to the city people, and the city guy, his name was Steve. He said that he hasn't looked into that yet, but he's got to try to figure out what to do there. Because that guy said that he's going to put berms on both sides of it, of his property, and no water's leaving his place.
Yeah, that's the way the law reads.
Mm-hmm. So he has to put a ditch or something under, or a culvert or something under there, and he said he wasn't doing it when I talked to him.
Okay, we will direct staff to see if they get to the bottom of this.
Yeah, so what we need to do is make sure that that ditch is open, so when we do get floods, a lot of rain or whatever,
Has a place to go.
has a place to go, and then right on down to the neighbors, right underneath his property on 245 Airport, and then underneath the airport and into the waste ditch.
Fortunately, the law in Idaho is very directed towards things being maintained the way they were when it's development, so I shouldn't have a problem with it.
Other than that,
Staff. Rodney, can you put that on your list of?
Daniel's got it.
Daniel's got it. Well, that's what you're the director. You just pass it on to somebody else.
But also, what we're looking at right now tonight is just annexation and zoning. So whatever is going to be developed, those issues will be brought up at that time too, as to what will be developed or might be developed on that property. And so those issues will need to be mitigated at that time.
So if you don't see any changes or adjudication of what you want, then come back and let us know at that time. But I think that engineering, they're very good about taking care of these things. The law is very much on their side, your side, so.
So anyway, they told me not to worry about it until April 15th, and at 15th, then we've got to, make sure that it's already in place or get it done, one of the two.
Okay, what's the 15th?
April 15th is when the water comes in.
Oh, okay. Not a farmer. All I know is tax day. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
You bet, appreciate it.
Would you like the applicant to speak now?
Yeah, if you can address those issues.
Nick, were you able to hear that?
I was, and out of respect for that gentleman, I want to make sure I'm clear. I heard him loud and clear. I'm not certain who he spoke with. I don't know if he's referring to a project I've got on 39th, but I'm not certain what he's talking about, I guess.
We believe it's a different developer, Blake Wolf.
Yes, I'm quite certain he's got the wrong. It's my, again, I'm not questioning him or trying to make waves, but nobody from our group has spoken with anybody about removing, changing. If this ditch is part of something that feeds everything else, just like you said with engineering, we'll be happy to do what's necessary to either tile it or whatever we have to do to get our developments done properly, and we'll cross that bridge when we get there. But nobody has made any comments or anything. Either myself and my partner actually resides for the most part in Florida, so I can tell you that he's never talked to him.
Okay,
So,
thank you very much. Anything else?
no, the gas station portion that's on there, I need a gas station to learn how to run a gas station like I need another business. So that's pretty well gone by the wayside. It was an option, but at the end of the day, once we get there, it'll most likely just be 2.25 acre-ish with 2 commercial buildings on it as kind of our end use.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. Do I hear a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Do I hear a second? Oh, okay. Matt? Adam?
I know, we're close.
Okay, all those in favor of closing the public hearing?
Aye.
All those opposed? Any discussion on the item?
Seems pretty straightforward.
Do I hear a motion somewhere?
Good place for it.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we recommend to City Council annexation and zoning to IL, Light Industrial Zoning District at 245 North Happy Valley Road and 4513 Airport Road for 4.45 acres for Peterson Holdings LLC and all conditions of staff.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries.
Thanks, Nick.
And
Awesome.
the
Thanks,
next,
everybody. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
He said thank you.
oh, thank you, sir. The next item is a zoning map amendment from suburban residential to two-family duplex residential for a future development at 1110 South Elder Street, a 0.18 acre portion of block 145, amended plat of Coots? How do you pronounce that? Kurtz Edition, vacated, located at southwest, so on and so forth, for David Nugent, ZMA 128-20, and is the applicant here? Please state your name and address for the record and tell us kind of briefly what you'd like to do, sir.
David Nugent, 16520 Mulberry Lane, Nampa,
Thank
Idaho. Bought the property about 10 years ago. It was vacated right away for a road back in '97. So they adjusted the lots, subdivided it up, put in utilities to the middle of the lot. But they didn't get around to rezoning that contiguous piece. It's, as you can see on the map right there, the road comes in from Elder Street. There's a duplex right in the middle, and then there's lot number 1 with the rezone there. So it kind of makes it hard to build anything with that on there. So I'm just trying to get it cleaned up. I was going to build on it, but the way prices are right now, I think I'm going to pass on that. So I just need to get it cleaned up.
So you're just getting it ready, more or less?
Yeah, Yeah, if the leprechaun comes by and drops a pot of gold in my
Sure.
lap, then maybe I'll do
If
it.
I had won the $1 billion, I would have been glad to help you
Yeah.
out, but
As
unfortunately.
of now, we're just gonna get that finished, and so
Okay.
it's all done.
All right, thank you, sir. We'll talk about this and get right back to you.
Okay?
Who's the staff? Parker.
Thank you, Vice Chair and Commissioners. The action requested from you tonight is a recommendation of approval or denial of the zoning map amendment from RA to RD for a future development at 1110 South Elder Street for David Nugent. The applicant has stated that the intention is for future development of the lot, as you just heard. The criteria used to evaluate zoning map amendments are that they must be reasonably necessary in the interest of the public, further promote the purposes of zoning, and agree with the adopted comprehensive plan future land use map for the neighborhood. The property is located inside city limits and is zoned RA. It is designated as medium-density residential. In the future land use map, the lot is 0.18 acres and is surrounded by RD to the north, east and south, as well as RS6 to the west. It is townhouses, duplexes on the north side, fourplexes on the east side. The future land use map. All public utilities are available in Greenhurst, on Sharon's Way. The access to the parcel will be determined by the city engineering and the fire department, but I believe it will be from Elder Street. The property boundary has recently been adjusted as of last week or a couple weeks ago. And an easement has been established. This is close to what was recorded for the lot split, property boundary adjustment, sorry. And as you can see, the access easement is down the middle here. We received correspondence from the following agencies. Code enforcement, being one to highlight, has requested that the weeds be destroyed throughout the property as part of the approval of the rezone. The RA zoning designation has remained due to the property never being developed. The property previously was split with the RA portion of the existing lot being on its own lot. The lots have been adjusted recently to make those two lots into one. Per 1035, when a lot is split zoned, as is this one, you apply the code of the more restrictive zoning district to the lot. In this case, it would be the RA zoning code that you would apply. This would prevent development from occurring on the lot. The rezone is our way of cleaning up the zoning for the future development. And as the applicant has stated, he does not wish to develop his property at this time, but may sell in the future to have it developed. And this is him getting those entitlements in place for that future development. If the commission recommends approval of the rezone, the following findings are required. It be in harmony with the comprehensive plan, be compatible with the adjoining property uses. The rezone would not create a spot zone, and it would be in the interest of the public. The recommended conditions of approval are those found in your staff report, in addition to any conditions that you wish to impose. And I will stand for any questions.
Any questions to Parker? Okay, thank you very much, sir. Is the applicant present? We already talked to him. Well, I'm getting a little mixed up here, sorry.
Anyone online?
Is there anyone online? Yeah. Nope.
Nope.
Nobody here other than either you gentlemen for this? No. Okay. Do I hear a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Aye.
You want to state your reason in case maybe you can change somebody's mind?
This public hearing.
Michelle, were you opposing it, or you were just late getting to the aye?
I was not opposing it. It's an
You
aye.
were, you were not, okay. Reason. All right, thank you very much. Anybody would like to make a motion to recommend approval to City Council?
Mr. Vice Chair, I'll make a motion that we recommend approval to City Council for a zoning map amendment from RA to RD for a future development at 1110 South Elder Street for David Nugent. It's ZMA 12820, with all conditions of staff.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'll wait for you the next time. The motion has been passed, and we'll go to City Council. And Karen, number 5, do we need to move that or anything? Okay, to February 9th? Okay. Let's see, so we need to have
We don't need to do anything for it, Karen? It's just already done? Yeah, so we just got to...
oh, it's already done. Okay. So the next item, 2 of you left, is continued from the January 12th meeting. It's annexation and zoning to BC Community Business Zoning District at 11043 Moss Lane. Conditional use permit for a vehicle repair and used vehicle dealership on .42 acres for Dwayne Steve Lee. And this would be a recommendation to City Council. The applicant, yes, sir. You state your name and address and tell us briefly what you'd like to do.
Dwayne Lee, 4057 North Valentine, Eagle, Idaho.
Kind of briefly what you'd like.
What's that?
Briefly tell us what you'd like to do, sir.
Well, we want to change we want a conditional use permit to make it from residential to commercial. We want to annex it into the city to get our commercial conditional use permit.
Okay.
Correct?
All right, thank you, sir. We'll talk about this and get back to you.
Okay, Vice Chair, oh, sorry.
Whatever. I'll answer to anything. But I thought that, no, I guess not. All right, go ahead, Doug.
Okay, Vice Chair, Commissioners, Doug Critchfield. So the requested action this evening is an annexation and zoning to BC Community Business Zoning District at 11043 Moss Lane, and a conditional use permit for a vehicle repair and used vehicle dealership. The purpose is that the applicant desires to modify the current property uses with a vehicle repair shop and a used car dealership. This is an aerial view of the site looking from the north to the south. And this is from Moss Lane, again looking to the south. The history on this project is that it currently is a county rural residential. It is commercial in the comprehensive plan future land use map, and it is surrounded by commercial land use settings. The location of the property, again, in county rural residential, is surrounded by community business to the north and to the east, and county properties to the south and to the west, both being rural residential. The west property is a residence. The eastern property is an automobile and wrecking and storage facility. And then the Boulevard Plaza Shopping Center is to the north. There are utilities. There's a 12-inch domestic water main that's located in Moss Lane adjacent to the property. The other utilities are some distance from this property, as indicated by the engineering department. And so engineering has indicated that the continued use of the existing irrigation water rights is acceptable, and that the existing the existing septic system is also acceptable, and that any new development is required to submit septic plans for approval to Southwest District Health. And here's a picture of the utilities. The 12-inch water main is shown here in blue, and then the sewer system is to the west, a fair distance from the property. Police and Fire Service incorporated areas surrounding the current location. The site is located on a residential street with commercial to the north and an automobile wrecking yard, again, to the east. The area is in transition from county residential to commercial use. Access to the property is from Moss Lane, and the road classification for Moss Lane is a collector. There are several regulations that were stated in your staff report. I won't read the regulations to you, but the result of those regulations. So in Title 10 of Chapter 16 of the Nampa City Code, it talks about the BC zone and the intent of that code. And at the end of the staff report, there were a list of different types of uses, either permitted or required through conditional use permit. A used car dealership is a permitted use in the BC zone, but a car repair business requires a conditional use permit. In Nampa City Code, Title 10, Chapter 16, 5C, it talks about setbacks. Because Moss Lane is a collector road, a 20-foot setback is required for any new construction. And in that same section, item D, in terms of interior yards, because there's a residential property to the west of this parcel, a 10-foot buffer would be required, or a 6-foot side obscuring fence between the residential property and any parking lot proposed on this parcel. The other regulations have to do with the fact that this can be annexed because it adjoins city limits. The commission is charged in Title 10, Chapter 25 with the commission is charged with determining if the repair shop is compatible with the types of uses permitted in the surrounding areas, and for stipulating conditions if a conditional use permit is approved. And rather than recommending the annexation and zoning designation and making a conclusive decision on the conditional use permit, the action this evening, the commission will be recommending to the council the annexation and the CUP. We did receive some correspondence from agencies, engineering division with some general comments. We did receive some comments from the building department with the standard Title IV language, and some email correspondence from Brandy Walker of CenturyLink indicating that if construction occurs on the site, that would be in conflict with their facilities, the developer would be required to submit plans for approval. The findings on this project are straightforward, that the property owner requested this annexation zoning to BC in order to operate an automobile sales business with a conditional use permit for the vehicle repair shop, that the annexation conforms with the 2040 comprehensive future land use map and is compatible or reasonably compatible with the existing land uses in the area. A vehicle repair garage exists on the property currently, and the area can reasonably be assumed to be available for the orderly development of the city within the city limits. The conditions of approval are stated in your staff reports, that along with any other conditions that the commission wishes to impose this evening. With that, I'll take any questions.
Anybody have any questions for Doug? I haven't heard from you, Sarah. Are you here for this application?
I am.
Okay.
We're currently the repair shop. I own the building, he rents it.
Oh, okay.
So I just wanted to show you too that on research.
Could you come up to the microphone, please, sir? You're not being recorded, but we can hear you, but it's not being recorded.
Okay. I just wanted to show you that too, with the research I've done with Ted's Diesel was in there 25 years, 30 years ago. It's been an industrial building, a commercial building since way back when it was built. And in 1994, when Ted Diesel started, and it's been a mechanic shop since then. And it was a building before then. I don't know who was in there before then.
Did you just recently purchase this, or?
Like 3 months ago.
Oh, okay. What was it before, with all those vehicles parked all around the
With all those vehicles is next to us. That's the wrecking yard next to us.
Oh. Well,
We don't have we've got some cars in there for our storage, but that
Well,
wrecking
the
yard is
photograph here,
next
it looks
door.
like it's the main businesses.
Yeah. See, that property, I guess, at one time was all one, and now they're over there, and,
That makes me feel a lot better.
yeah.
And you've been provided with the conditions of approval from the staff report that we just went over?
No.
You-
Well, I mean, yeah.
And so you're good, you're
Yeah,
agreeable?
yeah, we're good with all that.
Okay,
Okay.
yeah, good.
Anybody online, Doug?
No, nobody online.
Does this gentleman want to speak?
What? Did you want to speak, sir, or you just?
I don't want to muddy the water.
Yeah, well, maybe you, you want to be alive tomorrow to go to work, right?
That's right.
Name and address for the record, please.
Bertley Wilson, 550 South Bighorn Drive, Boise, Idaho. Thanks for having us, Vice Chair and Chairman. We appreciate your time. As we anticipated operations in this building, we looked at, we met with the city of Nampa. We saw the future annexation and the purposes for the surrounding areas and how they've evolved over the last several years. You've got Dennis Dillon, some newer, very, very classy commercial operations who, as things grow are growing out that way. I've been with Rush Truck Center for about 15 years and managed, general manager of that facility. Multi-million-dollar facility, state-of-the-art, very high class. My interest is that, we use a facility like this and be able to attract customers. With that, we've already removed several tons of debris that have been there from previous ownership and renters, and we'll continue to clean it up and understand that, that's a key part of our business is the ability and opportunity to attract that business. So in a reciprocal fashion for the city of Nampa, doing our part and being something that could represent the city of Nampa.
And thank you for cleaning that up. The presentation is important, I think, when people go to your business, and you've done your part to clean it up, and we appreciate that. You have a question?
Yeah, is there any type of environmental cleanup that's required on that site?
We had a study done before Dwayne purchased the property. There was a study done, and it was clean. So, yeah. There was also a study done in 2006.
Great, thank you.
You bet.
Thank you very much, sir.
Absolutely.
Take a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
I heard 2 seconds. I'm not sure who came first.
You can have it.
Okay, the motion was made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Any discussion? Any questions?
We need to do them separate, or?
I think so, don't we? Need to do the CUP separately?
No, well, the CUP can be recommended along with the annexation and
That's correct, yeah.
Next time you can take over the vice chair position.
I was paying attention to what he was saying.
Oh, okay. All right, so then do I hear a motion from somebody?
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we recommend to City Council approval of annexation and zoning to BC, Community Business Zoning District at 11043 Moss Lane. And along with that, the recommendation for approval of this conditional use permit for a vehicle repair and vehicle dealership for Dwayne Steve Lee with all conditions of staff.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. For all those in favor, please designate aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Thank you, gentlemen, ladies. Lady.
Did he say recommend approval?
And that concludes our meeting, I think. You guys having some kind of discussion over there that involves us? No? Guess not. Okay, thank you, gentlemen.
Can I say one more thing?
Not officially.